Alright, what's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning back in. It is a pretty lazy Sunday here in Korea, so I figured I'd make a quick video. And this is actually going to be the video portion to one of the first articles I put up on my website. And the topic of today's video is going to be a Korea video. It's going to be teaching in Korea, and specifically we're talking about Hogwans. And what I want to talk about today is how to choose a Hogwan job, and more importantly, how to choose a good Hogwan job and filter out a bad Hogwan job. So, let's start off with what exactly is a Hogwan. So if you are thinking of coming over to teach in Korea, you've probably heard this term Hogwan before, or maybe you haven't. But I think there's some confusion as to what a Hogwan actually is. I know when I first got started in Korea, way back in 2011, I was kind of confused. I didn't totally understand myself what a Hogwan actually was. So, I think we need to explain it. Basically, a Hogwan is just the Korean word for a private academy, like a private school. But it's not a private school in the way you're probably thinking of private school. When we think of private schools in, well, at least in Canada, we're thinking about an alternative to public school. Like, parents would pay extra money to avoid sending their kid to public school and send them to a fancy private school. In Korea, it's not quite like that. These are basically supplementary education. So a Hogwan is where Korean parents will send their kids after the normal school hours are over. So after they finish at public school, their parents will pay extra money for these academies, and they will send their kids there. And there are tons and tons and tons of Hogwans in Korea. I think the number was like, last time I checked, there was 70,000 Hogwans in Korea. So, okay, and usually the way it works is that the Hogwan specializes in a certain subject. So you got a math Hogwan, a social studies Hogwan, a science Hogwan, and then you have an English Hogwan. And that's what you're going to be working at, is you're going to be working in an English Hogwan. So, if you've done any research into this topic, you probably know that Hogwans get a bad reputation amongst English teachers in Korea. There is all kinds of stories out there about, foreign teachers who come over to work for a Hogwan and they end up getting screwed over in some way. Whether it's, they get jerked around on their pay, or they just generally get treated like shit. The thing you gotta keep in mind is that all of these horror stories are, for the most part, true. There are a lot of scummy, shitty Hogwans out there. My first year was like a year and a half in Korea. I worked at three fucking Hogwans in a year and a half because they were all just so shitty, and I didn't last more than like 6 months at any one of them. So there's definitely a ton of crappy ones out there, but the thing you gotta understand is that there's also, decent ones out there. There are. And for all of the shitty ones, there are red flags that you can watch out for when you're searching for a job. I can tell you right now, for all three of those Hogwans, there were all of them had major red flags that I just, I ignored them because I was a newbie and I didn't know any better. And I paid the price for it. So that's why I'm doing this article right now, is because I want to show you guys what those are so that you can avoid making the same fucking mistakes that I did. So, with that said, let's crack into it. I came up with 5 of the biggest red flags to watch out for. So, red flag number 1 is that they won't let you talk to a current foreign teacher at the school, okay? The reason that you want to talk to a current foreign teacher at the school is basically you want to kind of find out what the real deal is. You want to ask them, number 1, how does the foreign staff get treated? And then number 2, you also want to ask them to you want to confirm everything you ask your employer during the interview. So when you go through and you have your job interview with the Hogwan owner or the director or whoever it's with, you want to be asking them certain questions about their business, and we'll talk about what those are. And when you talk to a current teacher at the school, you kind of just want to confirm all of that, right? And if there's any discrepancies, that probably means there's some fuckery afoot and you should avoid that school. So, big red flag. If the school does not let you speak with a current teacher, that is just, there's no reason they shouldn't let you do that. Absolutely, it's a huge red flag. Here's a quick pro tip. When you do talk to the current teacher, make sure you talk to them after work, okay? Get their personal phone or their personal email and talk to them when they're done work, because a lot of times what will happen is you'll have your interview and you'll ask them, hey, is it okay if I talk to a current teacher? And they'll say, oh, yeah, sure, we'll have him or her call you at, X time. The problem with that is a lot of times they are calling from the office, so they kind of have like the Hogwan staff like looking over their shoulder and listening in, and it's just they're going to be less likely to be honest with you if it is a bad school if they have their boss breathing down their neck, because that's just how it works. So make sure you talk to them after work hours on their either personal email or Skype or phone or whatever, and then from there you can just pump them for information. So that's number one. Number two is that they have high teacher turnover. So when we talked about asking questions during your job interview, there are a few you want to ask, and here are a couple of them. Number one, you want to find out how many foreign teachers are at the school. You want to find out how long they've been with the school, and you want to find out how long the school has been open for, okay? Okay, the reason you want to do that is this. What you really want to be finding out when you ask them about their other foreign teachers is you want to find out, number one, if the teachers are finishing their 12-month contracts or not. And the second thing you want to find out is if they have teachers there that are re-signing for second and third years, okay? So the first one's pretty obvious. If the teachers are not finishing their full 12-month contracts, a lot of times it's a bad sign because it means that they are getting fired. One of the common sort of dirty tricks that these Hogwans will pull is that they will fire their teachers late into their contract, like the 10th or 11th month, basically to avoid paying them severance and to avoid paying for their flight home. So, if this is a school and you find out that a lot of teachers are not finishing the contracts, there is a good sign that something like that is happening. Now, that's not necessarily true. Sometimes teachers just quit. They might leave for personal reasons. They might not like Korea. So if it happens a few times at a school, that's not a big deal. But if it's one of those things where you find out this has happened repeatedly over and over again. This was the second school I worked at in Korea. It had this exact same problem. You want to really watch out for that. And then you kind of also want to find out how long the school has been open for, because the longer a school's been open, the more financially stable they usually are, okay? And that brings us to our next red flag. Number 3, they are financially unstable. So here's the deal. You want to find a Hogwan that is, number 1, a good school. So, they provide quality education. They're easy to work with, all that. But you also want to find a school that is a good business, okay? That is major, because Hogwans are businesses first and foremost, okay? They exist primarily to make money. So the thing is, if you are working for a school and it's only been open for like a year or two, me personally, I wouldn't sign that contract because, it might be a good school and, it might be a successful, thriving business, but generally speaking, what happens is a lot of times if these schools aren't doing so well financially, that eventually trickles down and starts to affect you as a teacher, okay? So one way it affects you is layoffs. If the school doesn't have enough students, they're not making enough money, they can't keep all their teachers, and then they start laying people off, and that might be you, and then you gotta go find a new job, and it's a huge pain in the ass. And the other thing, and this is also a question that you want to ask during your chat with the current teacher, is late paychecks. So the first school I ever worked for in Korea, it was run by a Korean American woman who was very, very nice, but she just had zero business acumen whatsoever. The school was just like deep in the red, and it was bad. Within a month of being there, it started getting to the point where all of our paychecks were coming in consistently like 2 or 3 weeks late and consistently incomplete. So they'd pay us like half the paycheck and they'd say, oh, we're just having some trouble right now, we'll pay you the full thing in, 2-3 weeks, and then 2-3 weeks would come and it'd be like, oh, we're still in trouble, can we pay you a bit later? And it was a, I'm getting worked up thinking about it. It was a complete nightmare. So you want to avoid that as much as possible. You really, really do. So that's the third red flag. Okay, so next red flag, the owner's a dick. What you'll generally find with your Hogwan is, depending how big it is, you're going to have kind of a number of different people you'll work with. So you'll almost always be working with local Korean co-teachers, especially if you teach kindergarten. You'll probably have some administrative staff, and then depending on how big the Hogwan is, you'll also probably have managers, maybe like a director, and then a vice director, and then the owner. So in my experience, usually, if you're working with like shitty coworkers, you can usually work around that. Okay. I'm assuming most of you have had jobs before. You've probably had a few shitty coworkers. It sucks, but you can deal with it. However, if you have a shitty boss, if the owner is a shitty human being, you're gonna have problems, because that is the person, number one, who's signing your paychecks, and it's also the person who owns the school and is ultimately calling all the shots, okay? This is true anywhere, but it's especially true in Korea, where there is a very sort of rigid hierarchy. So that is number 4. If the owner's a dick, you want to watch out for that. That is also a question you should probably ask the current teacher. Okay, and the last one, red flag number 5. Shit, my battery's dying. Red flag number 5 is you get a bad feeling in your gut. So I remember it was the second school I worked at, and I had my interview over the phone with the owner, and everything looked good on paper. It all penciled out pretty well, but I just remember talking to this person, and I had just a bad feeling about her, man. She, even without being face-to-face, just like, something about her voice, just like, it just set off all the alarm bells in my head. But I was young and naive and stupid and new, and I ignored it, and I signed the contract anyway, and it was horrible. So that's the 5th red flag. When you're going through the interview process, if you get a bad feeling in your gut, just don't sign it. You gotta remember, there are tons and tons of these Hogwan jobs out there. They're popping up every day. You will always find another job. Don't feel pressured to sign. Make sure you do your due diligence. And yeah, that is it. Those are my 5 red flags. Thank you very much for watching. If you guys have any questions, if you are thinking of coming to teach in Korea, or you're just curious, pop them down in the comments below, and I will make sure I get back to you. Thank you so much. Peace.